Welcome to Pandora's Awareness Podcast, a place where we collect stories and circulate life-changing wisdom. I am your host, Asher, and our guest today is Alyssa. She's here for the second time, by the way. And Alyssa, we're just gonna wrap today because we already set the scene. Those that don't know, we had a previous episode that me and Alyssa had a conversation, but today we're just gonna get together and talk and just share some stuff. So Alyssa, if you don't mind telling us where you're hailing from, what you specialize in, or you adding value to the world, and who you've been a hero to, as always.
Yeah, I'm coming in from Canada, right in the middle in Manitoba. I am a high level, I'm a life and business coach. I work more on the transformational root level of things. So, really getting to the core so we can make transformation in our lives. So, we're not just pushing through things all the time and having more willpower, motivation, but so we can actually create change in our lives that comes from a deeper level. And who I serve people who are ready to be awake, to go to their next level, to learn new things about themselves and really learn how to go deeper and love themselves more so they can expand to to their full potential so they can serve in the world so they can really share their gifts.
Mm. It's something about the word, are they ready? Because
Mhm.
when they're not ready, all we gotta do is love them from a distance until they're ready. Because there's a
Mhm.
lot of people who aren't ready. I know we have this really good chat so far, and I want to keep that conversation going. And there's a few things I want to start with, but I think based on what you just said, I think we should tap into something that we was talking about the like I think human being has a dimensional challenge. I think we are here like trying to figure out how to tap into different dimension of life. And I think when I realized that I was awakened, and this happened for me 2020, September 2020, I think that was the time. I think it was like right after COVID, going to the end of the year. I was in Kuwait at the time, and I wasn't asleep. Like, I mean, I was laying there in my bed, Alyssa, and I felt this vibration in my skull. Like my skull was on fire and it was vibrating, and I was awake. But then I stayed like my eyes closed up because there was something happening while I was there. And then I met something out of this universe, right? I met another being that transformed me into more than one being. But the approach to me was in the version of a female, but it was a male. But then it separates into a female. It was kind of something I can't explain it right, but it happened. But at the end of it, the feeling that I felt, I was like, oh my God, what was that? Like complete ecstasy, man. I swear to God, it was just what it felt like. And from that moment, I had this crazy hunger for like knowing things. And it hasn't stopped. So when I'm start hearing people talk, I'm start listening to things, it start making sense to me. Like a lot of life start to make sense. Like I'm start be able to see the what's happening between the duality. Like, the opposite thoughts, the positive, negative thoughts combine together, the conflict that happens between and what creates information, what creates a spark. That stuff sort of like really starting to make sense to me. Like whole life really happens. And from that space, I'm like, oh my God, I gotta go out there and just gotta do something with life now, even more on a bigger scale. So I don't know what was like for you when you felt like you was awakened to, like talking about people that just want to like are ready to be awakened.
You know what? That feels like a journey in itself to get there. I feel like the pandemic through those years was really powerful for
Mm,
a lot of people, like 2020, 2021, where we
mm,
had to kind of close off from what was normally happening. And for me, I was really sick during that time. I almost died during that time.
mm,
Massive infection in me that was being constantly misdiagnosed. I went to hospital, was had surgeries that were unnecessary until they finally found it. And I remember being in such a state of, I want to say calm. It was just such a peace, such a calm when I finally got into hospital where I was going through all these crazy things with my body. But I had this deep sense of knowing
mm,
that everything up until that point was serving me in my life. And it was turmoil. Like I've had such a turmoil filled life and just getting to that stage. And then ever since then, things were different. And ever since then, I started asking different questions.
mm,
And really, why am I like this? Why is the world like this? Why did I make this choice? Why am I thinking this way? Like the world just started opening up. And it's like, why can't it be different? And then coming into now and how I've kind of grown in my career, how I've sought out different forms of education and learning, and I love social media for this because there's no filter for
Mhm.
the most part. As long, as long as you can open it up and get out of the normal kind of channels, people are sharing their wisdom of different aspects of life and how to open up other than just mainstream going through your day to day, entertaining yourself, like all the things that keep us distracted from actually connecting with ourselves to enter that realm of learning. Like it's not even duality anymore, it's non-duality, it's getting past that to really touch into your essence, to your divine connection. And it's so funny when you were talking about seeing that presence. I had a flashback to 2010. I would say that would be the start of my awakening journey when
Mhm.
I had a major a slip and fall accident, which started this whole health journey for me. And and I thought it was the medication that I was on, but I saw a figure at the when I was lying in bed, I saw a figure all dressed in white
Mhm.
at the base of my bed. And I was terrified, but I didn't know if I was scared, terrified, or just it was so big, the energy in the room. And I knew that that was, I brushed it off as though I was hallucinating or something else. But
Mhm.
I think that was just the start of your life is going to be different. And I got you.
Mhm.
And I haven't thought of that moment for a long time, but that just came up when you were talking about the beings that you see, the energy that you experienced, and that it's so big. And ever since that, it's for me, it was a, I tried to run away from it at first.
Mhm.
I started drinking. I started doing all the behaviors that were just not like just to numb out because it was too big for me then. But coming into now, it's like that's what I seek out.
Mhm.
Like, where can I get in touch with this energy? And I've been in my practice too, I facilitate breath work and experience it. And some of the things that you can tap into when you go through processes like that, when you're just one with your body and you're playing with the pH and you're really connected, depending how your facilitator sets the stage and the guides that are called in, and how you call in your own guides and connect to Mother Earth. It's big. Like it's I don't even know how to explain it. What we were talking about before, where you can't really say the words to explain these things or to really what were you saying? It was to get your truth across, right? Like
Yeah.
what is the truth? What is the perceived reality of the situation? And it's really phenomenal because I try to think back about some of my experiences and it's like, well, I can play with energy with my hands and I can heal my body. And it's like, well, what do you mean?
Mhm.
That's insane. Like I even tell myself, that's weird. Like, what are you talking about? You can't play with energy in your hands. Yeah, I was playing with energy. I was like zooming it in and out. Like it was phenomenal. Like,
No, let's go back. Let's go back to truth and explanation. Like truth and explanation is not the same thing. And I had to learn that because I was trying to figure out like every time I try to explain something, I'm making stuff up. Same with anybody else. When they're trying to explain something, they're making it up. But truth cannot be explained. Truth is just truth. And what we see, what we think, what we perceive about truth is just what we perceive to our filter. So it's never really truth. It's just our explanation of truth. So I gotta recognize when people try to share stuff with me, I'm like, that's their explanation of the truth. But I need to find that truth for myself because I can only feel it. Like when I feel it, this is what I feel, but I know I can't explain. I try to explain, but it's not really come out the same way. So I separate the two things. Truth and explanation, not the same thing.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's so powerful what you said about too, the feeling part.
Mm,
Feel it, right? And that's so powerful because your body is your unconscious. So what
mm,
you feel actually is more truth than what you think.
mm,
Because your mind is how it distorts things, how it shapes reality according to your programming, the belief system you grew up,
Mm-hmm.
like where you're standing, right? I love those pictures that are like if you're standing on this side, it looks like this. If you're standing on this side, it looks like this. Both people are right, but it's like you're seeing completely different things, even though you're looking at the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like saying the sky is blue. It's like from where you're standing, it is, but is it actually blue? Like even questioning that, what is blue?
Mm-hmm.
Like we can go down that rabbit hole, but but it's yeah, it's wild to think of there was this I do a lot of marriage things, especially in my own marriage, really trying to figure out how to grow together. And I study imago therapy. And I don't know if it was through them or a different model, but there's not only two people in the room. There's four people in the room whenever you're having a conversation. There's
Mm-hmm.
probably more, but it's you and them and your perception of them and your expectations of the other person for how they're talking and the vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just you and them. It's
Mm-hmm.
there's all these different things at play. So how do we cut through that to really allow someone to have their full expression without trying to put our version of what we want them to be and then react that way, right? So it's really a fun, I want to say game, a fun dance to try to figure that out, especially in romantic relationships, in work relationships, and just allowing someone to be themselves and noticing to the perception you have or how your childhood is playing on how you're perceiving that person because of the way your nervous system is reacting because of something that happened 20, 30 years ago. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I get to unravel in my work. And I think it's phenomenal, right? Just the way that bringing back to the expectations, the perceptions, the explanations that we create in our mind that aren't necessarily true. But the mind has this beautiful way, the ego has this beautiful way of everything it does is to keep us safe. So once we come to that, is how is me thinking this person is doing this or that? How is that keeping me safe with the way that I'm reacting or behaving? And then once we kind of get to the bottom of that, it's like, oh, so that was on me. Now I can clearly hear this person now that I've tended to me.
Mm-hmm. You said something before we start recording about your kids, and I think I think that ties right into what you're saying just now. And you said I don't want my kids to have my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell
And
me, expand on that a little bit more because I'm curious about that part.
yeah, I never wanted kids. And from the outside, my life looked really good. Like I grew up in middle class, beautiful community. We had church community, we had everything, but I was a top achieving athlete, top achieving in school. But I really didn't like my life. And then getting into high school, university, I was abused a lot. I was in different situations that were really unhealthy, really, really abusive and traumatic. And I decided I don't want to have kids because I don't want them to have my life.
Mm,
I said, I don't think anybody should have to go through what I went through. Just it wasn't what I thought life would be because I had always been told to be the good girl, be kind, like in essence, people pleaser, like don't stand up for yourself, no boundaries, like leading to those types of behaviors, which led me into really, really dangerous, really bad situations. And I really didn't like myself.
mm,
Like at all. And I studied the Enneagram and I'm a three, so an achiever. So really focused on how I'm seen from the outside. Like I have to achieve to receive love. So really focusing on the external appearance. So I would always dress nice. I would always like get to the gym. I'd always look good. And I'd always pretend that I was elevated and enjoying life and stuff like that, but really not and really just in a bad place. So thinking that if I bring life into this world that they'd have to go through that. And then coming into question after I met my husband and after all these things started turning in my head, like, oh, well, what if they don't have to have the life that I have? What would have to be different that they wouldn't have to go through what I went through? It's like, wow, then you start examining your childhood and
Mm,
your behaviors that kind of led to getting into these situations where your nervous system, like knowing logically, well, it's not safe to be in an abusive relationship. We all know that, right? We know it's not safe to be with someone who hits you or abuses you or anything like that. But why do we keep going back to them?
mm,
Because our nervous system grew up with that, thinking that it's safe. Oh, it's safe for me to be told what to do instead of asking my opinion. Oh, it's safe for me to feel disconnected because growing up, my father was disconnected from me emotionally. Not saying there's anything bad or wrong about that. That's their childhood trauma too. But when does it stop? So that's what led me more into generational healing and how do I stop that? Like how do I heal? And I don't want to say become a different person, but how do I take off the layers that stopped me from really owning myself and owning my confidence and setting boundaries where I could invite people in and have flourishing relationships and be able to talk and have my voice matter and then connect with people and really I think the biggest thing too is saying no. How do I say no to something that doesn't feel good? And that comes too, and when we're going along those lines, stemming to how do I trust myself? Because as we're growing, and I've studied this a lot now, as we're growing up, children are taught to not trust themselves.
mm,
They're taught to be woken up at a certain time, to eat at a certain time, to finish their plate, to have certain foods. It's not what is your body telling you? How does that feel? What do you need right now? They're in a constant state of being told what to do, told how to feel, told not to feel, right? Don't cry, don't be angry, say sorry to your sister, versus I see you're angry. That's pretty big. Can I
mm.
sit with you during that? And then, yes, we can deal with behaviors after that, but really, how does that feel in your body and what's trying to be expressed? And then that tumbles into so many different things, right? The schooling system, the
N-
medical system, like,
It,
and yeah, it tumbles over, but really that trust in yourself. How can I trust myself so I can speak for myself? Because I know it's what's true in my body.
I do want to tap into a word that you use, the healing part, the healing, the childhood thing, because if you think about the word healing, it could be abstract
Yeah.
because like people don't really know what it means. So when you're saying heal, like what does that mean? Like understand the abstract version of healing, because healing is this, but then to actionize healing, take it from abstract to action. Like what would be that thing that people like, okay, I gotta do something about healing. What is that action version of healing is like for you when you was doing it?
Yeah. And I think and physical, I believe in it from my experience, physical sickness is manifested through emotional sickness.
Mm,
So when we're repressing our emotions, when we're repressing our truth, when we're repressing ourselves, and this is when I actually got really sick, is when I started kind of trying to cover up, like, no, I was never this person. All those things were so bad. I have to be this person because this is a good version.
mm,
And then I got sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker, and things happened in my body that shouldn't have happened because I was repressing so much. And you can talk of it in terms of energy too, how energy gets trapped in the body and the fascia and it builds. And it causes these diseases that manifest physically. So I think we have it backwards, especially in the medical field where they treat symptoms, so the physical symptoms that are coming through, without actually going to the root. And I don't know if we talked about it last time, but I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition last year, and the doctor hyperthyroidism, Graves' disease, and the doctor said, "Well, you're going to be on medication for the next 2 years at least, rest of your life, all this stuff." And I was like, well, I don't agree with that. I don't want to do that. So I
mm,
was on medication for 3, 4 months. I sought the help of a naturopath to supplement with herbal remedies, to change my diet, because I had also gone through major antibiotic cycles with the other sickness that I had um, in 2021. So something inside my body was not working.
mm,
But I plateaued with doing all the right things kind of externally. So supplements, food, resting. I hit a plateau. And I do monthly checks with my biomarkers. And the big changes with my levels happened after coaching sessions with going to the root. So
mm,
really letting my anger out, anger that's been repressed for years, letting my sadness out,
mm.
coming to love the parts of me that I had hated so much. So after releasing those things, that's when my biomarkers started getting better. And then doing another breath work session when I said I was playing with energy and bringing this energy into different parts of my body. That's when my levels skyrocketed. And sometimes with the unconscious in our body, that's where our energy gets stored, that's where it gets held. And we don't need to be able to know in our minds the story or the reasons why or logic our way through. If we go straight into the body, straight into the unconscious, and we just trust our bodies that it knows how to heal, it knows how to release, because naturally it does, we just forget.
Okay, let's go back to this right here.
Okay,
You,
yeah,
this,
I put a lot in there.
yeah, yeah. I think you're getting to action from abstraction to action. You're saying like giving a voice to your anger, your sadness, your frustration. Like when you was given those parts of you that wanted to have a voice, like what did that feel like? What was that doing for you when you was taking action with those things?
Well, it's really beautiful. Neuroscience says it only takes 90 seconds for an emotion energetically to pass through your body.
Mm,
So if you're staying stuck in an emotion, so if it lasts longer, it can last for minutes, hours, weeks, years, having that energy stuck in the body. But neuroscience says, and they've tested this very thoroughly now, it takes 90 seconds. So allowing yourself to express, then it's not going to get pent up.
mm,
So if you look at generational healing, if you look at reparenting, going back to those moments in your childhood. And the great news about this too is you don't need your parent, you don't need somebody else to apologize, to acknowledge, to validate. You don't need that to heal.
mm,
You need to give that to yourself. And it's really interesting because usually what we want from someone else, that's what we actually need from ourselves because that's how we're treating ourselves.
mm,
So when we go into, and I want to give a specific example, um, when we go into, well, I just want that person to hear me, or they should listen to me. When we really tap into our inner child, and I do a lot of inner child work with myself, with my clients, and we get to the point where it's we're talking to our inner child and we're dismissing them, we're not hearing them. That's when we got to slow it down and release the energy that's so packed around that so we can hear what our inner child is telling us and actually acknowledge them. It's
mm.
really interesting. It's in the way of projection work and negative projections. When you're triggered by someone else, when you're really opposed to what someone else is doing, or you need something from someone else, that's actually what you need from yourself.
And when you're talking about yourself, I am thinking you're talking about that inner child that was angry at one point in your life, like in your journey, you was angry, you was
Yeah.
never acknowledged. And that anger sits around for a long time because that one situation that got you angry follows you around and you never voice that anger and be
Yeah.
acknowledged about it. So when that happens, that's when you're like,
Yeah.
that child is free now. And then
Yeah.
you keep doing that for different versions of that of yourself over time, and it becomes from there you start growing up, you start maturing, that the maturation process start happening for you now.
Mhm.
And that inner child grows up and meets you where you are.
Yeah. Or they get to just be a child.
To be a child.
And that's the thing. It's we have this analogy that I use sometimes. It's we revert back to our past selves in the way that we behave depending on the situation. So if we have an unhealed or an unmet need, and this comes out so much in romantic relationships and even in workplace, but um, upon reflection or even in the moment, depending on the awareness of the individual, I'll always ask, and how old is this part of you that's speaking right now?
Mm, mm,
How old is this part? And always slowing it down, right? If you want to go faster, if you want to grow faster, you slow down. So how old is this part? And they'll just kind of sit in it. It's like, oh, I feel like I'm arguing with my mother, or my mother's telling me to be quiet. I don't feel seen, right? It's like,
mm,
okay, let's visit that part. So then you can come to this conversation as your adult self. Because right now you're operating at your nervous system in the way that you're speaking, you're operating at a child's level. And it's so funny. My mentor, she was a child and family licensed psychotherapist in the States for, I think she has 20 years under her belt. And she always said, I never wanted to work with children.
mm,
But I realized every day going into my sessions, I worked with children because these adults and their relationships, they were behaving at their childhood levels. And it's like everyone operates from there, right? No matter how amazing our childhood was, no matter how amazing our parents were, they're people. They can't meet every single need that
mm,
we have, right? They can't meet that. That's impossible. And that's not their responsibility all the time either, especially now that we're grown, we're adults. That's our responsibility so that we can really come into this world in a well-rounded way where we're not reverting back and jumping back and continuing that hurt cycle because that's what it does, right? When you look at anxious, when you look at avoidant in relationship, that's coming from childhood. That's not coming from now.
mm. I like
So
that
that's
question.
to do with the general generational healing. It's what are the behaviors that I exhibit, right? Anxious, avoidant, those are very common, especially they attract, which is just a gong show of a fun time. That's me and my husband right there too. So he's avoidant, I'm anxious.
Mm,
So I get more anxious because he leaves, like if we're talking about our childhood programming, he leaves, I get more anxious. I try to step up, I get louder. And it's like, oh, I need to take a moment. What part of me? Like, how old is this part of me? It's like, oh, it's not me now. This is a way younger self.
mm,
So how then, for the healing part, how then I'm gonna talk to or acknowledge myself. I see you, honey. I see you're worried. I see you're worried he's leaving or he's going. I'm here with you now. You're safe. I
mm.
got you. So allowing that part of my nervous system to calm and then coming at it and looking at it from a different lens. Oh, he needs some space, right? He needs some
Mm.
space. I'll go chat with him later when we're calm. And then I don't go through my roller coaster of the up and down, the all the ways that I cope, right? All the different coping mechanisms that we have, whether it's um, food or entertainment or different destructive behaviors. Then we don't have to go through that cycle anymore. Then it just stops.
Mm.
And it's like, oh, okay, I'll go do something else. I'll connect with him again at a different time, but I know that I'm safe.
I was thinking about, you said avoidance and anxious. Just imagine if avoidance and anxious had a kid, what that kid be?
Every day in the world, my friend.
But I go back to this powerful question that you asked.
Yeah,
Like, how old is the part of you that is speaking to me right now? Man, that is an incredible question. We talk about that dimensional problem that we have. It's like you gotta figure out going through the maturization process of talking to that person, see where they at in life. Like, how
yeah,
did they actually mature to where they at right now? And you ask the question like, yeah, which what age are you speaking to me right now? Like I would love to know. Like, do you actually know what age you're speaking to me right now?
yeah,
And without nobody taking offense, like, no, like you're speaking from a different age, maybe a different dimension. Like, where are you right now speaking from? And once you
yeah,
start understanding that, come back to the healing process, then we
yeah,
figure out, okay, well,
yeah,
healing. That person need to speak, and that person is trying to speak right now. I should figure what that person trying to say.
yeah, exactly. And it's always tending, right? Because most people will just push aside, push away, repress more.
Mm,
No, no, I need to hear that part. That part's trying to come up, right? They're coming out sideways, they're coming out every which way in my life because they need tending to.
mm,
Let's tend to that part.
mm. We started with my awakening and your
Mm,
awakening,
yeah.
and we're talking about your childhood, your kids actually. And I know we talked about, and I'll go back to the piece a little bit too. When you talk about the kids, like you didn't want
Mm,
your kids to have your life. There's so many people that are thinking that same right now. I met a lot of people, and because their childhood was so horrifying or so traumatic, they don't want to have any kids. But then they get old, like, oh, I wish I had kids. You know, they
yeah,
want the kid, but they don't want the kid, and like that's that they having that conflict there. And but when you say you didn't want your kids to have your life, but then you realize that they don't have to, I think people need to understand what that really means.
yeah, yeah. And it's really people think, well, they need more money or they need to be able to experience more things or they need this or they need that. Kids, they're pretty simple. They need
Mm,
love, they need connection. But
mm,
what we do too, and this is common in so many areas because you can see people from middle class, from rich class, from all those different areas saying that I didn't have a good childhood. I feel empty right now. I'm just going for more money because I think that's going to fill me.
mm,
What they're looking
mm,
for, they're really seeking connection, right? We spend so much of our day trying to give our kids different things or experiences or a bigger house. And it's like we could live in a tent and we
mm,
could hang out all day. We could be connected. We could just,
mm,
and kids are like, well, that was the best thing ever, right?
mhm,
That was the best. And the great thing is, I don't have to work for 10 hours a day to be able to give them that. So I'm not missing from their lives for most of the day. We brought in a little bit of the school system too, that kids need attachment, especially from their parents.
mm,
When they don't get that, when they're at school 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 10 months of the year, they're missing out on that. And they're attaching to their peers and their teachers or whoever it is, which isn't secure, right? They can have great friends, they can have great teachers, but it's not the same as a parent.
mm,
Mhm. So it's really evident too when your kids go to school for the first time, right? And it's like, well, they don't want to go. Like we
mm.
try to hype them up or something, and then they come back and it's just, and this can last far into the years too, but we either repress or distract. And it's they come home and it's just meltdowns because they felt so unsafe during the day because they weren't with someone that they were connected to.
Ah, stop right there. Stop
Yeah.
right there. They wasn't with somebody they connected to. And I want people to think about this too, because just imagine when you were grown up,
Mhm.
you were grown up, they send you off to college, and you have difficulty fitting in and connecting to friends, and you have way more skills than a 6-year-old. And you're like, I still don't feel connected to people at school. I don't feel like I'm connected. I feel disconnected. I feel like I'm alone. And when you
Mhm.
send a 6-year-old to school, it's the same thing. Because feel connected with mom and dad, but when you go to school, they don't feel connected. So you come back home and you're losing your shit because what? Connection. So we come back to connection. So man, I'm just thinking about it right now. I'm trying to process this because you said it and it kind of hits me about the young version, the young kid that go to school, go out there and doesn't feel connected and don't even have the skill to establish connection. Like, how does
Yeah.
that feel like for them?
Oh, well, just think back yourself, right? Those first
Mm.
days of school.
I have
And
bad memories. I have really bad memory of my history. So you have to take this one on.
I yeah, well, I think about even I didn't like it. Like,
Mm,
yes, there were friends, we were playing, especially in the younger years, but it was I would cry when I came home. I would run home. I needed to see my mom, and we had like an extra long bus ride because I lived out in the country when I was young. And
mm,
then I remember one time too, I missed my stop. So I was stuck on the bus and I was terrified. It's like, I need to get home.
mm,
And I remember too in junior high. So for us, that's grade 7, 8, and 9. I called my mom. I think it was grade 8. I called my mom almost every day. I said, I can't be here. I need you to come get me. Like, I'm scared you're good. I still remember. Oh, I still remember this. This is so good. I I got work to do on this. Just I called my mom every day because I thought she was going to die.
Mm.
This went on for months. I called her every day in school. I said, I need you to come get me. I can't be here. And that's just wild to think about. So when you're going back to childhood development, the way that a child sources safety in themselves is when you're going through the first, I don't know exactly, 5 to 7 years. That's when the attachment is the style of attachment, the feeling of being safe, the feeling of trusting your own body.
Mm-hmm.
That's when that's all getting put in place or programmed, so to say. So as they get to that tipping point, the way that they felt with their parents, they start feeling that way about themselves. So
Mm.
if it was a strong, secure attachment, if their parents were reliable, trustworthy, if they were dependable, if there was connection there, then that transfers over from the child to themselves. But if you
Mm.
don't have that in the first few years, it doesn't transfer over. And that's when we have a lot of extra work to do as we're older, as we're adults, to really source that
I
because
never
it didn't
thought about that.
naturally happen.
Yeah, I never thought about that. Oh, wait.
Yeah. And especially, I think it's different down in the States that after, I've heard as little as after 2 weeks, a mother is expected to go back to work.
No, it's not. It's I don't know the right number, but it's really soon. Like after, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas overseas in different countries, it's no, 2 years. And even then like do an adapted schedule. Have help be with your child because that helps their development. That helps them be safe. So when they go out into the world later, they will have more of a sense of connectedness, of safety. They're not going to be having all these illnesses because they're so anxious and so stressed all the time.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's
Right.
that's that's another really like there's so much to go into there. And there's so many different connected pieces between a medical system, food system, education system, how it's not serving to the family, to the child, to help them have a strong sense of self, to help them trust themselves, to really set them up to be confident, to love their life, to reach their full potential, to have fun doing things that they love, that lights them up, that inspires them. A lot of it is the process of I have all this anxious energy in me. Am I going to try to numb it out? Am I going to try to repress it? Am I going to distract myself? Am I going to entertain my way out of it? There's, yeah,
Mm.
there's different
So
routes.
so so
Okay.
would you say that that's what you went through with your nervous system growing up, why you kind of have so many health issues later on?
Yeah. And I think, like I was saying, even like our parents did the best that they could. And they did a phenomenal job, but it's just the systems that are put into place when you send a child away to school for most of the day, or even it's really interesting because even the most innocent, simplest things, and I forget too, as we're getting into adulthood, we forget too that our parents had their own issues, had their own
Mm.
childhood stuff they were dealing with. So much grace there. And especially as a mom now, I'm like, yeah, sometimes I freak out. I yell at my kids, but then I repair.
Mm.
So it's like, can I say sorry to my kids? Can I go back and comfort them? Can I reestablish that trust?
Mm.
Can I let them know I had a lot of anger? That's on me. I need to deal with that. I should not have treated you like that. I'm sorry. I'll work on that. Right?
Mm.
How do you apologize?
Mm.
Or I know a lot of the common ways that we were raised with and that gets perpetuated that isn't healthy is, well, you made me angry. You were
Mm.
taking too long. And it's like, no, your child didn't make you angry. You had that anger in you
Mm.
because they were learning, because they were taking their time, because they were doing exactly what a child should. So what is that anger in you? How does that need to be tended to? And I love we can go into triggers now too, because triggers is has been such a buzzword online for a while. It's like, well, triggers, you made me mad, or trigger warnings, or all this stuff. And And it's always assumed, or the way it's portrayed is that triggers are given to people, that they're caused by other people. Whereas no, the trigger's in you. They
It's
just knocked
it's
on the door.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's that
What are
button
you
that you
doing?
have. It's that
Yeah.
button that you have, and then somebody push it. But that
Mhm.
button was already there. So you gotta thank them for pushing it, let you know the button is there. No, you got to get rid of that button.
Yeah, exactly. It's for you to tend to, right? Nobody gave you that button. It was there. They just pointed it out for you. And
Mm,
what's so great about that is if you use, like, the universe is such a friendly, such a beautiful place, like life school, right? If you say thank you for bringing up that button, just change your perspective a little. It's like,
mhm,
that was a big button. Thanks for pointing it out. Now I can tend to it so it
mhm,
doesn't get pushed again, right?
mhm,
And that's not to say hide it.
mm,
That's to say let it express, see what part of you needs tending to, so that it's not a button anymore. It's not an issue,
yeah,
right?
find out the origin of that button when it first was put there, and why
Mhm.
was it there in the first place, and then eliminate that button. Smooth
Yeah,
surface. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow, Alyssa, man, every time we talk, we go on this roller coaster ride because there's
I know, it's fun.
there's so much interesting thing about the way we think about life. And I know when we first started chatting up about just the universe itself and how beautiful things are. When you come into that space where you feel like stuff is like the universe is giving you a thing, and this is what I also think too. When it comes back to being a person that in the accepting mode, the receiver mode, like accepting things and not blocking it, receiving things and not pushing away. And oftentimes we get in a space where we don't do that. And sometimes solution is coming to you, but you're not an acceptor. You're a blocker. You don't get it. You don't receive things. You're not open to things. So you never get the solution you need because you're listening, but you put up so much barriers. And sometimes we miss out on so much in life when we become non-receivers,
Yeah,
non-acceptors, blockers.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. And it's that's interesting because the way that I think about that is a little different, right? Everything that's when you talk about blockers, the walls that we put up,
Hmm.
the reason we put that up was in some way our ego, our mind, our like that part of us thought that that
Hmm.
would protect us.
Hmm.
So really the resistance that there is just a protector. So how can we allow that protector to soften so we can receive?
Hmm.
But it's first allowing yourself to really seek safety, right? Be nourished, seek safety, really allow for yourself to be vulnerable. And I think that's a really big thing nowadays is just, well, if I'm vulnerable, then people will take advantage, or I'm not safe, or like I need these walls, right? I need them. So there's something in there that really says to me that this person's nervous system, we need to
Hmm.
source a lot of safety. And what I'm always doing with the way that my methodology works is I'm always insourcing versus outsourcing. It's not I feel safe because things out there are safe. It's I feel safe because in me I have created safety. I've nourished myself.
Hmm. Let's go back to vulnerability because I don't think people don't get what that word really means.
Yeah.
Like they hear it, but it was like, ah. So here's the thing. You cannot establish connection when there's a wall, and you cannot speak to be heard when there's a wall. So the only way to do is to be vulnerable. And vulnerability doesn't mean you're like, oh, I'm the softest thing in the world. No, vulnerability means that I'm open to share what's going on in my world. And I'm gonna share it. Doesn't matter what other people think, but I'm gonna share it because this place is safe for me to do so. So I was saying to other people, like, be vulnerable because that's the only way people gonna understand you. Is when you're like, all right, I'm gonna stop. I need to share what's going on with me. How would I know what's going on in your world if you're not vulnerable enough to tell me what's going on in your world?
Yeah. And that's multifaceted, but I like the way that you said it doesn't matter what other people think.
Mm,
And another way to have a perception of that as well is to other people are allowed to have their own experience in
mm-hmm,
response to what I say, in response to what I do. Like it's okay, it doesn't mean anything about me.
Mm.
right? Like they can have their anger, they can have their joy, they can be sad, they can have their anxiety. It doesn't mean anything about me because how they behave, how they react is based on their subconscious, unconscious programming that is experienced through their childhood or through the healing work that they did. So I love personal responsibility is such a huge part of the healing process, right? It's especially, I always come back to romantic relationships because it's always so amplified.
Mm.
Uh, it's, let's say you get angry at your spouse for them sharing something. It's to come back to that and say, I had a lot of anger from that. This is what was coming up for me. This is the story that I was telling myself about it to be vulnerable, and that it had nothing to do with you, but this is what I was making it mean.
Mm.
So coming to that point, it's like, oh, this was inside me. This is how I reacted. And knowing too, this takes work to be able to do this in relationships. It's like, can I just have a moment to be with this part? Or there's another thing that me and my husband have started doing too. It's when you have all this big energy, right? Like all this anger or something coming up, and it's, can you hold? Meaning, can you hold the space? Because I have a lot coming up. I need to rant or express or scream, like whatever it is. Can you hold the space? Can you make sure that it has nothing to do with you, but I need
Mm.
to express.
So what we say about this statement
Mm.
that you're responsible for what you say, but I'm responsible how I feel. Or
Mm.
I'm responsible for what I say and you're responsible how you feel. Because if you come back to that and think about it deeply, like I I can't control how you feel.
Yeah,
So therefore you are the one responsible how you feel. Like that's a complete your responsibility. How you feel about what I say is on you.
yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, 100%.
Mm.
100%. Yeah, it's really really interesting. I chatted with my mom about something. She was expressing to me how something I was doing was making her feel this way.
Mm.
And I said, "Okay, well that's up to you." And she was like, "No." Like, no, no, it doesn't have anything to do with me. Like if you've worked through your feelings and you have something to let me know,
Yes.
right? Like if it's, oh, and this happened, and this is how I felt, this is what I was making it mean. If you could approach it in this way, or just let me know ahead of time, or like those types of things, right? If there's something kind of tangible that comes out of it. But if it's just, you said this, it made me angry, that's not even something you need to go back to the other person for. It's no, no, I just need to deal with my anger so I
Hmm.
can actually hear what you're saying.
And that ties back into vulnerability because if I'm vulnerable, I'm like, hey, when you said that, it made me feel this way. I didn't know that because nobody knows how you feel. Doesn't matter what I said because if it's you right there, if I spoke the same thing to two people, I'm like directing at a crowd
Yeah,
of people right now, and everybody in the crowd feel different about what I just
yeah,
said. I'm talking to everybody, so it's all about you gotta take responsibility for how you feel when words are said to you or something is voiced to you because your meaning making has nothing to do with me,
yeah, yeah,
nothing to do with
exactly.
me.
It's like, I love how you said that. It's like if I'm giving a talk and there's 100 people in the room, there's 100 different perceptions of what I said in the
Mhm.
room. Like I'm not
Mhm.
responsible for any of that. If
Mm-mm.
you're feeling in a certain way in response to what I said, your first responsibility is to check in.
Hmm.
I felt really angry about that.
Why?
Let's slow down. Let's check in.
Like why
Why
why I
was I
feel angry
angry?
and the
Yeah.
person next to me didn't feel angry. Like why the
Yeah.
yeah,
Why
yeah.
were they laughing? I was so angry, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's your responsibility. Okay,
Mm.
what is my anger telling me?
Mm.
What do I need to check in with myself? And then if there's something that needs to be shared, right? If there's a boundary that needs to be shared, if there's something that needs to be spoken, then yes, speak it.
Mhm.
But first tend to yourself, because normally it'll just be, oh, I needed to hear that part of me.
Mm.
That's it. I
Say
just
that
needed
again.
to
No, say
hear
that
that.
again. You
I
need to
just
hear.
needed to hear that part of me
Mm,
because I've been repressing it. That's why it's angry because I was ignoring it. And I was
mm.
putting the responsibility on everybody else to hear me, but it was for me to hear.
Ah, no, that one right there topped it off.
Yeah. And then once you come back to that situation, if you've tended to yourself, you're going to realize, oh, I wasn't triggered by that anymore. Oh, I
Mm.
can see why they said that. That's kind of funny. Like it completely changes your perception, the way that you receive information.
Mm.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I'm gonna top it off with this piece because some people might hear it and they probably still don't get it. But here's the thing: if I speak Spanish, you speak English. I just cuss you out in Spanish. You have no idea what I said to you,
Yeah.
right? But all you hear from me is just a bunch of noise. Whatever you decide, what is Asher saying? You probably made some stuff with me here, but what I'm saying. But all I'm saying is noise, right? I'm speaking in Spanish. You want to speak English. But if I switch back and I say it to you in English, and he's like, guess what happened? You still made the meaning up whether I said it in Spanish or English. So you're the meaning maker. So you gotta check your own meaning that you make up about things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, Alyssa, if somebody hear you right now and be like, we talked about in the beginning, I asked the question who you been a hero to, and they heard you like, yeah, Alyssa, you're definitely my hero, and they were like, we got to chat just like you and Asher had that conversation. I want to have a conversation with you like the same way. So how can they connect with you?
Well, I am very minimally online. I'm at Van Alstyne Alyssa on Instagram. I'm in the process of putting up a website, but not in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm mostly on LinkedIn, Facebook. Yeah, just Alyssa Van Alstyne. Search me up. I'll also too, if there's anyone out there who just really is hungry, who's just I have all this stuff coming up. I want to just talk and see. I want to explore. I
Mm-hmm.
can leave you a Calendly link
Mm-hmm.
with my booking schedule. There is like an application type of questions to fill out to confirm a spot, but
Mm-hmm.
just to see. And then if it's something that's like, oh my goodness, let's open up. I'd like support on this, or I'd like to explore what that would look like. I'll leave that with you. You can put it in the show notes if it feels good. And we can connect that way. But yeah, I run my business mostly offline and it's spacious and beautiful.
That's the best place to do it because I'm a fan. Everything, people, this is what people are looking for. That's what I'm noticing to a lot. As much as somebody get resources, information, so forth and so on, everybody wants to take their story and put it through the filtering system of your process
Yeah.
because they don't understand what it is. Like I want to apply my story to your system and see what it tells me about it. And that
Yeah.
requires a one-on-one conversation oftentimes. Like I gotta talk to you. I want you to hear me first and tell me what you think about what I just say to you. Because oftentimes it's different when we have just listen to your free content, they put out. But when you talk and like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. I'm like, okay, well, when you say something, it hits my mirror and it looks like this. And when you
Yeah.
get to see that, he's like, oh yeah, oh my God, I didn't know I looked like that. Because
Yeah.
oftentimes I love this phrase. It says like we can never see the label on the jar while we're inside the jar.
Mhm.
And you would not know your true potential. You would not know your true purpose. You would not know what you're really good at because you won't see the label on the jar. When somebody says, "Hey, this is what you look like," it's like, "Really?" And you get a mirror, like, "Oh, really?" And then you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh my God!" But oftentimes it is seen before you see it by other people, and
Yeah.
that's what we need other people connection to tell us what's going on. So,
And I love what you said too, because the role of a coach too isn't to change you, to fix you, anything else. It's to mirror back. And
mm-hmm,
especially, I love science. I love research. 95% of our behavior is unconscious, meaning the way that we act throughout the day, we do it because it's what we do without thinking. We do it because that's the way we do things, right? The same route we take to work, the same way we walk, do our dishes, cook our food, the jobs we have, it's unconscious. It's been programmed into us. Only 5% of the way that we go through our day is from the conscious mind.
mm-hmm,
So yes, when you're making these changes, when you want to transform, when you want to have goals and move towards something that's different, that's out of the norm, you're going to be going against the unconscious work. So unless you're really studious with like awareness and have all the tools yourself, you're going to need someone to ask the questions, right? What part of you was acting there? What age was that part?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why do we go about these things? What do you fear? That's such a great way to discover what's holding you back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never going to be from the conscious mind, right? It's going to be slowing down. It's going to be a lot of reflection. It's going to be tapping into your body and just, oh, yeah, that's why. That's why I haven't been able to do something that's so simple, right? That's some why I can't do things that I have all the strategy for. I have it all lined up, but
Mm-hmm.
I keep hitting these walls. I keep hitting these ceilings because it's not visible. It's not within your awareness at the moment.
And I would tie a bow on that in saying this because this
Mm,
is something I discovered. It took me a while to recognize it, but
mm,
when somebody's transforming, they open they're connecting to a new identity about themselves that they want to become. And
mm,
oftentimes, the mistake people think, they're thinking the person that you are right now is the person that need coaching, and it's not. It's the person they're becoming, the version, the new identity, because that new identity is like a new baby. And a new baby need connection, need care, need nurturing. And that's the person that gets coached in the process of being. Because when you look at that person, you're like, wait a minute, nobody's supporting that little baby. Nobody's caring for it. That baby's scared because of the new identity. And that's when you need a coach like, hey, I see the new baby. I know what the new baby need. And we're
mm,
gonna be a community around you, support you, and coach that
mm.
new baby into confidence in that new identity. Because oftentimes you see it, you think it doesn't have confidence because it's new.
Yeah,
And that's what I need coaching. Not the version right now. The version right now is comfortable and satisfying. His comfort zone is good. I don't need no help. The new
yeah,
version of me that I want to be, that's who needs help. And that's who
yeah.
gets the coaching. Sometimes people miss that part.
Yeah, yeah, and it's so funny like once you go from like we were talking at the beginning from like the when you're awake, right? It's
Mm,
like well first you're completely like ignorance is bliss, right? There's no awareness, it's just you're going about your day and then you start waking up and it's like there's problems everywhere and it's like you're swimming in your muck and it's like oh no, I'm just going to go back to ignorance. But it's like just on the other side of that, right, is
hmm
something completely new and beautiful. So it's
hmm
like going from like not making changes to like swimming through the muck,
hmm
like actually getting to the other side. And it's like, oh, look at the beauty here.
hmm
Look at this. This is what was available. Yeah.
Alyssa, if you had to wrap up today and say, this is what some of my biggest takeaway or giveaway, what would that be from this conversation?
Oh, well, I love talking to you, Asher. I think it's such a gift. The person you are, the way that you interact, like your own journey. I love it. And we have such a great conversations. It's
Mm,
so fun. Biggest takeaway, I would just say if you're in it, if you know, because it's a body knowing, it's a full body knowing, it's if you know that things could be different, if you want it different for yourself, for your family, it's available.
mm,
And everything around you doesn't have to change. It's just how can I change my thinking? How can I tap into what's in me?
mm,
And that's what's going to change everything around you. You
mm,
don't have to live in a different house. You don't have to change communities. You can change your life just by shifting the way that you see things, the way that you are with yourself, the way that you love yourself and take care of yourself. And that'll change your world.
mm. And I will add this last piece because I think you just triggered it for me just now. But for the person that's listening to your conversation right now or listen to us, and if you had to travel 3 to 4 years into the future,
Mm,
then answer this question for yourself. What would have to happen for you to be happy with your progress this far in your life? Like, what would have to happen for you? Because oftentimes, we gotta sell ourselves on our own future. Because oftentimes, we all in it. As a coach, we're in the business of selling people on their future, really, because you want to be something else, to be somebody else, to be you in a different way. And oftentimes, you need help getting there. And the first person that have to buy into that future is you. And then you get other people like us to help you, like really buy into that future and get it done. It takes a lot of work. It takes support, it takes community, it takes
mm,
new strategy, new insight, and foresight. It takes a lot of those things.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
One last question,
yes.
just in case you're listening. What is that one thing or two thing when people do drive you crazy? Just in case somebody might show up, let them know what it is.
Oh, that drive me crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, bring up something in me that I have intended to. So they bring it up and I'm like, oh my goodness, you. And then it's like, oh, that's me.
That's
That's
you.
me.
That's you. Yeah.
So yeah, it drives me crazy in the best way possible. It's like I want to
Mm.
blame you so bad, but I can't.
I want I want to point a finger at you, but damn it, the other four or whatever is pointing at me. I can't, right? Yeah. No, that's that's funny. Alyssa, it's been a pleasure, my friend. It's been a
Yeah.
pleasure rocking with you, chatting with each other as always. And folks, you're tuned into Pandora's Awareness Podcast, a place where we collect stories and circular life training wisdom. And today you get to know Alyssa a little bit more and get to know how we think when we like have the idea of tennis going on. Because in the end of the day, you want somebody to have a really good idea of tennis with. You throw your idea at them, they throw it back, and before you know it, we sweating and we having a good time. So
Yeah.
yeah. Any last word?
Oh, just cheers. Cheers to everyone listening. Cheers to you. Cheers for opening up your mind to think that something could be new or different, or that the world is just a beautiful place that wants everything for you.
Hmm. And with that, folks, make it an awesome week.